クロスディグ101始まります。今日のテーマはですね、広島と長崎の原爆、あるアメリカ人の視点からです。広島と長崎に原爆が投下されて80年が経ちました。実はですね、この広島、長崎の原爆投下機、爆撃機ですよね。ここに両方に乗っていたアメリカ人兵士がいたんですね。ジェイコブ・ビーザーさんという方です。で、そのアメリカ人兵士のお孫さんが今日本に来てまして、彼はアリ・ビーザーさんという人です。で、彼はですね、このおじいさんのこの原爆投下機に乗ってたということを知って、その後ですね、日本の被爆者と会ったりして、この原爆の問題を非常に考えています。戦後80年経ってですね、日本人の私たちとしてこの原爆について考えなきゃいけないんですが、もちろん今複雑な国際政治とかあるんですが、このアリさんの視点を通してですね、じゃあアメリカの方は今どう思っているのか、じゃあこれから私たちはこの原爆についてどう考えたらいいのかということを話していきたいと思います。So Ali Biza, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
So I've known you here for 9 years.
That's right.
There's a HuffPost article written by Arisa Ido in 2016. Mm-hmm. And recently you wrote a book called キノコ雲の上と下の物語. So basically this is a book, so you wrote exchange letters between the 被爆者 and you were talking about how the mushroom clouds and the nuclear atomic bomb affected both lives. So first of all, could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm a writer, I'm a documentary filmmaker. Spent the better part of my career actually meeting atomic bomb survivors and their family members. So with my book here, actually I wrote with my friend Kosuzu Harada, who's actually her grandfather survived both of the atomic bombs. And in that book, we explore both of our grandfather's stories in the first part, and then in the second part, we do exchange letters and we talk about everything. And there's nothing we didn't talk about that's happening in the world today, about just how we view not just nuclear nonproliferation, but how we view our friendship with each other and how we view each other's role in this world that we have to live in together.
So in your book, you talk about your grandfather.
Yeah.
So I just spoke to the audience, explain briefly about your grandfather. Could you introduce your talk about your grandfather?
Yeah. I mean, so he was a lieutenant in the Army Air Corps. I think he'd wanted to fight in the war before Pearl Harbor was attacked. Now, he's a Jew. He's a Jewish man. We're a Jewish family. His mother, my great-grandmother Rose, was actually helping save orphaned children from the Jewish genocide, the Holocaust.
Oh, for the Nazis.
From the Nazis. Now, they weren't orphaned at the time. Their parents were sending them away to get to safety because they weren't safe in Nazi Germany and they were saving their lives. And my great-grandmother, Rose, had a bunch of children coming through their house and she was helping place them in permanent homes in Baltimore and around the East Coast in New York, where we were from in Baltimore. And he was very keenly aware of what was happening in Europe at the time. So before America entered the war, he wanted to go and help fight.
So this is before the Pearl Harbor?
Before Pearl Harbor was attacked. He wanted to join and he was trying to become an air cadet. Anything he could do to get into the war. I mean, he wanted to go with the Royal Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, anybody that would have him, but he was underage. So his mom wouldn't let him join the war. Then, of course, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, America entered the war and no one really argued with anybody that wanted to fight by then. But he was a brilliant man. He was a third-year student at Johns Hopkins University, mechanical engineering major. He, of course, dropped out, but when he went to Scott Airfield at the Airfield Academy to join the Army Air Corps, they didn't have the Air Force back then, so it was all of the Army. And he placed 5th in his class. So he was very smart, and they wouldn't let him go to combat. So he, fairly early on, without his knowledge, he was marked for something bigger. And he was led towards sort of, first they wanted him to go to Harvard and MIT. He said, no way, I dropped out of school, I'm not going back to school. And they were like, well, you're not going to combat. So they sent him down to Florida, where he learned at the time, the top secret art of radar technology and radar countermeasures. So how do you not only navigate without sight, but how do you hide your location and those kinds of activities? So that's what he was helping develop in that technology. And he was training people how to fight with it, having never been to combat himself. So you know, it's a very, I mean, the whole story is obviously in the book.
On the book, yes.
How he got involved.
I highly recommend to our audience.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, how he got involved is a miraculous. I mean, it's not miraculous. It's an incredibly massive operation, the Manhattan Project, and how he got involved in it, how he got his role in it. Like, these are all things I've explored in the book. And he was an engineer. What he built part of the bomb's device that helped make it detonate in the middle of the air, but how, you know, how all of that happened, what they were doing, the way in which the bomb was decided to be detonated, all of that's in the book. And obviously we could talk for hours about it because it's such a long history. But the long and short of it is that, look, a lot of people say, oh, he was just following orders. But I don't really like that, because I think that he and everybody in that mission, they weren't just following orders. The war that was not started by America was very bloody and very everlasting. And as we know, Japan had vowed to fight until the last man. And they thought they were ending the war. So I think that they didn't just, they saw their choices as kill people one way, kill people another way. And when you have to kill people, there's no right way to kill people. These are his words. There's no right way to kill a person. And he was not proud of the role, and he was not proud of having to have to do that. But at the time, you went from a whole fleet of airplanes that were dropping fire bombs on wooden cities all night, all day, and that was intense and terrifying, and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were killed in those fire bombings. Then you took their mission, which was one airplane with one bomb, to do that. And they knew that they were going to do that. And I think that they saw it as a quick fix.
To end the war.
To end the war.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of things that I think that it's a very passionate topic, obviously in Japan, obviously in America, we can talk about that. But there's so many facts that I think it's important to acknowledge, not just the single event and not just some sides of it, but we have to sit and have a real discussion and have truth and ownership to reach reconciliation. And I think that means that we all have to sit here and acknowledge the things that have happened in our country's past. I mean, I do that here in Japan. I come here and I acknowledge what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki as an American. And I think that has been received in some way or shape or form. I know I will not make everybody happy. You cannot make everybody happy in this world. And I understand the passion that people have about this topic. But I believe that as we sit at these tables, we all have a duty to not point any fingers, but to look inward. As much as if we were at a table of multinational people, it would not for me to point at all the nations and all the things they did wrong. It is only for me to say, from my point of view, then you share your point of view, then everyone shares their point of view, what they did wrong and what they acknowledge. Not to apologize, not to endlessly apologize. That doesn't change anything. But to acknowledge and to face the truth so that truly it doesn't happen again. And unfortunately, we feel like it's happening again.
Right.
I think everyone feels like history is starting to repeat, right? I mean, like, no matter which side of the aisle you're on, no matter which country you're in, everyone feels things getting a little freaky, a little worse, and a little scary. And I think that's when people like me and Kosuzu have gotten together and to say, like, hey, like, there's only one outcome to what we're all talking about. And we have shown that she and I think she has a lot more to say than me in terms of how she could become my friend. But we have something to say in that if we can find a way to become friends, we don't have to forgive everything in the past. We don't have to have true reconciliation as a country or between other countries, but we do have to keep talking.
Yes.
And we do have to keep facing our pasts, because they're not becoming past much longer. They're starting to look like our future. And we can't let that happen again. So I think that's why we've started to speak up a little bit louder. No, Japan should not have nuclear weapons. No one should have nuclear weapons. We should not be getting more countries that have them. We should be having less countries that have them. Japan should sign the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons as the only country to have been attacked by them. But that's not the discussion that's happening right now. You're hearing more lawmakers talk about we should get more nuclear weapons.
Even in Japan, there's some people argue that we should have nuclear weapons.
I mean, a lot of people argue that, but it's like sitting around a table pointing radioactive guns at each other's heads, and we're calling that security. There's bound to be a mistake. There's bound to be some use of nuclear weapons, and we can't let that happen again. And
let's talk about the international relations and also about apology and also the narrative of that the atomic bomb ended the war. So there's a narrative. I grew up in the United States, so I was taught that it ended the war and saved 500,000 million lives. Yeah. So let's talk about it later because it's a very controversial discussion.
Exactly.
So before that, I would like to talk about your grandfather much more. So could you show the photo of this is...
I mean, we've got the whole lifespan of my grandfather sitting at the table. I mean, and this is from 1920s.
1920s.
Yeah, I believe so. He must have been about one here, even less than perhaps. Oh, he has a full set of hair, so I don't know. He really takes after my great-grandmother. This is him growing up with my grandmother and my father as a baby. This is him during the war in 1942. So when he was working on the radar technology.
In 1942. And you also have a recording of his voice.
Oh yeah, I do. We can listen to that.
Can you listen to it?
Yeah. Now, this was a...
Hi there, babe. I guess you're really going to be surprised when you get this.
So this is him during the war.
After all this time,
and he talks about his frustration of the role he was in because he wasn't allowed to go into combat. He's teaching.
Got it.
So,
well, looks as if my leave is really out. The transfer came through today. I'm back in the department. From now on, it's
they
the old
censor his
school
department.
for a while. Not exactly what I wanted. From now on, it's the old school teaching game for a while. Not exactly what I wanted.
Not what I wanted.
But it'll have to do.
Yes, thank you for sharing.
Every time we...
So your grandfather took part in the atomic bomb mission, both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah. And he passed away in 1992.
That's right.
71 years old. You were 4 years old.
I was, yeah.
So do you remember him?
I don't really have very vivid memories. I remember, so he died of bone cancer, right? And that really affected his appearance. And I don't remember this, but my mom, she recently passed away actually, and we found her diaries. And she wrote in her diary from around the time that my grandfather was dying that his nickname was Jake. People called him Jake, or it's not really a nickname, it's just short for Jacob. And they called him Jake. And so when they took me to visit him when he was dying, and I write about this in the book, but I said, who's Jake? Where's Pop Pop? Because that's not Pop Pop, that's Jake. And I didn't recognize him by then. But I was 4 years old, and I mean, but there's so few memories of him because I think, it was so long ago. But the thing about him is that he kept so many records. As you can see, like, he even sent a physical record. But he kept his... He would give speeches in the 80s, and he would record those speeches. He came back to Japan in 1985, and he recorded his on the handheld recorder.
Did he meet Hibakusha?
He met a Hibakusha.
Okay.
It was for Good Morning America, ABC. And he, here's the thing. The Hibakusha that he met in 1985, the person, I don't really like to say Hibakusha, by the way. So the person who was exposed to the atomic bomb that he met in 1985, she was 80 when they met. So she was 40 when the bomb dropped. She was already a thinking person with a full set of her own political ideologies when the bomb was dropped, right? So those were the kinds of people he met. And she acknowledged that the militarists in Japan had gone crazy, she said in her, and he goes, those are your words, not mine. And like that, she understood the political situation at the time. The people I've met were children when the bomb was dropped. They did not have a political understanding in 1945. They grew up, and the bomb experience shaped their political understanding. So that's why you have so much more the activist spirit among the atomic bomb survivors today, because they are the ones that like spearheaded Hidankyo, and they are the ones that definitely, maybe they were teenagers, and the younger men, and like Taniguchi-san and Yamaguchi, Senji Yamaguchi, and all those folks who we've lost by now, but they were the ones that really were spearheading the Hidankyo movement and the activist spirit. And I mean, as an American, I can relate to the fact that when there are school shootings and these young kids today are experiencing gun violence and they become activists too, and it shapes their politics. And these are the kinds of people that they were. So they grew up with this. So that's why I think that the people he met are not the same as the people I've met. And the politics and the experience that I've had are not the same as the one he had. But at the same time, that doesn't make me judge or blame the past. I think it just means that we have to learn from things a little differently now. And we've already lost the strongest messengers of the atomic bomb survivors.
Right.
I mean, even as valuable as it is to hear directly from their testimonies, it's hard for someone who's 88, 89 to stay on message and to deliver poignant testimony that really affects people. And I believe that while their voices are still the most valuable, we've already lost the most valuable voices in the sense that these are the most vivid, the most poignantly expressed testimonies. But that also means that Kosuzu-san and myself, we proved this. We wrote a book with people who are not alive.
Right.
We took our time to make sure we got it right. And I think that now we have a responsibility to find the strongest testimonies and bring them back to life through the records that they have left behind, so that we don't have to rush through this now. We have a duty and a responsibility to make sure that those very valuable testimonies, as poignant as they were delivered to us, stay alive and are brought to life for every new generation. So the reason why we wrote this book is that I think that one of the reasons, I mean, there's a million reasons, but every generation, as long as nuclear weapons exist, and frankly, after nuclear weapons are abolished, we need this warning.
Yes.
And every generation needs a version of it given in their generation's language. And we need to keep updating it as long as it takes, because we need to know what happens when a nuclear bomb is dropped on people. And today's nuclear weapons, if they're dropped, they don't just drop and destroy a city, they destroy entire countries and frankly, possibly the world. So that's pretty big and pretty scary and also really heavy, and people are tuned out from that. Even in Japan, nobody really wants to digest this and acknowledge it, and in America it's the same. And you see we can talk about some of the symbols that you wanted to bring up, because there's such a heaviness to it that people won't see it or they won't pay attention to it, because life is heavy. Life is scary, and nobody wants to go to a movie theater and face something that's even heavier and even scarier. And as offensive as the Barbenheimer movement was in Japan.
Yeah, let's just, for the context, show the article of the Barbenheimer. So to explain to our audience, so Barbenheimer, it was like a social media meme during when the movie Barbie and Oppenheimer was showed.
On the same day.
On the same day. So this is a HuffPost article, but you can see that people combined Barbie and Oppenheimer like this.
Yeah.
So as a citizen living in Japan, this is very uncomfortable for me.
Sure.
So it's like making fun of the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
So is this how the American people see the atomic bomb?
Okay. I think that humor is cultural. And so Americans take very little seriously.
Okay.
Just off the bat. You have shows like South Park. Do you know South Park?
Very cynical, very
cynical. They just showed the president nude and in love with Satan, right? So that's the kind of level of humor that we are already accustomed to. Just things like Family Guy, all kinds of crazy sitcoms, which don't really have a culture in Japan around, which we could talk about. There could be a cartoon that really latches on to here's the thing, there's a quote. If you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you.
I see.
And the thing with Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer, whatever, is that they were released on the same day. You couldn't have two, possibly any different movies. And so they combined the imagery of the two of them out of the sheer irony that they would be released on that day. And I think that offended people in Japan because they were outside of the joke. And I think that they weren't official sanctioned things that just sort of took on a life of its own. Now here's the thing. You had people that would never touch the Oppenheimer story. And that movie, it didn't show what happened when the bombs are dropped, but it was very arguably an anti-nuclear movie. Right? You have people that would never get that message. But because of Barbenheimer, they said, oh, well, we'll go see Barbie in the morning and then we'll go see Oppenheimer at night. And that movie made so much money because people went to see it. And if they didn't have this Barbenheimer thing, I don't know how much people would have seen that movie. It's a very heavy thing. And again, it's almost, his next movie is the Odyssey, right? And it's, in fact, it's like a Trojan horse of sneaking something into Troy and people surprise attack Troy. And the Oppenheimer Barbie controversy actually saw so many people that would never see Oppenheimer otherwise, they got the message. And everybody that left Oppenheimer, they left very, very heavy, sobering feeling. Because, I mean, you know, I don't need to spoil the movie, and I think that many people probably didn't see Oppenheimer because of that result, and that's a shame because they're letting a controversy cancel them from seeing something that was a very arguably an anti-nuclear movie, and even the plot of that movie, it centers around this conversation that Oppenheimer had with Einstein. If you saw, did you see Oppenheimer?
I saw it in the United States.
I saw it in Dubai, of all places. But I was living in Rwanda at the time, and I wanted to see it in IMAX, and so I had to come to Japan, and it was a long story, but I went through Dubai. I saw it in the IMAX theater. It was everybody left that theater shaken. And in a time where nuclear war is likely, in a time when nuclear weapons are spreading and not reducing in the sense that other countries are trying to get them, we need to see films that talk about the dangers of nuclear war and the heavy feelings around them.
Yeah, so I get your point. So even though it's a bad joke at the beginning, in Japan especially, and I felt really uncomfortable, but at least in the end, people went to the movie theaters and learned about got the message. So I kind of get the point. I kind of disagree, but let's go on the conversation.
We're all allowed. I think the thing about America as well is that we have freedom of speech.
Right.
And freedom of speech means freedom of speech you don't agree with. And that's great. Like we have this ability in America, we used to, and I think we're starting to see it. It's really hard to talk to each other. But you don't have to agree with me to be my friend, for me to have a conversation with you, and for us to get along and respect each other. I respect your point of view on that topic as much as you're sitting there actually kindly respecting what I'm trying to say about it. And like, I don't necessarily mean that it's a good thing, but I do understand that American humor takes very little seriously. And I think as a result, people use humor as a way to prove a point, as a way to make a change, and as a way to, you know, have an impact. And I think that you know, marketing, that it was, you know, by itself not sanctioned marketing, that it really just took off on its own out of the sheer contrast of it all. I mean, yeah, that explains sort of also the moment that we're in terms of our history, right? Like, could you think of anything more different? I mean, more similar to the fact that like everybody is sort of facing the climate crisis, the proliferation of nuclear weapons, wars upon wars, and we all have to go sit there and have drinks on a Tuesday night or a Friday night and have fun. It's an offensive image, but it's also offensive to think about how much we enjoy ourselves when so many people are suffering right now. Like the fact that we can sit comfortably at a table while Gaza, there are tens of thousands of people being killed and starving, and I can reach for my water.
Right.
But the thing is that's the contradiction of life right now that we're in. And I think that, of course, to be someone who was from Japan and obviously like descended perhaps from an atomic bomb survivor, I had many friends that were still offended by it who will not agree with me on this. And that's fine. And I don't necessarily feel like, in terms of all the things I care deeply about, this isn't one of the things I care the most about. So I'm not like supportive of it.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
You're trying to explain. I know
think what I try to do is I try to understand people that I don't
know
agree
you're
with.
not supportive of this, but you're trying to explain or give the context.
Exactly. Yeah, it should be clear that I'm not sitting here trying to support that. But you know, I just think that I sort of understand it. I think that there's a spectrum, right? And maybe you want to talk about the other symbols because it talks about.
Let's talk about the high school. Yes.
Yeah, because I want to bring the spectrum.
Yeah. So for the audience, so this is another article by HuffPost. It's an article about the documentary film Richland. It's in Washington, right? So this is a high school in Washington. There's a football team and it shows the jerseys and there's a school logo. And obviously this is the mushroom cloud. So for them, it's kind of a pride. Could you elaborate on this? Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, so I would say that there's a spectrum of American belief when it comes to anything. You have 300 million people. There's 300 million opinions. And I think that the spectrum is people who think that the bombs were good and necessary to end the war and a source of technological pride, and the people who
like a scientific accomplishment.
kind of,
Okay.
yeah. And there is a lack of understanding, I think, in those communities about the negative impacts of nuclear war and nuclear weapons, and the many people, including themselves, if they're living anywhere near Hanford, Washington, like exposed. They're exposed. And so you have on the other side people who think that the bombs were unnecessary, look, we have also evidence of all kinds of things that happen in America that people have a hard time understanding and believing. And whatever source of information you get is the source that you believe in. These are kind of the times that we're in. I think that's kind of everywhere. So I think that there's a spectrum. I don't necessarily agree with that. I also, there's also American football teams that in the national level that were called the Redskins that Trump is trying to bring back as well. So I think we don't have a history of necessarily being respectful. This is also the country that had Jim Crow laws that segregated people and that had enslaved black people for 400 years and are still having a hard time acknowledging that. So I think that for me, I love my country in the sense that we are an imperfect union that is designed to perfect itself and has all kinds of points of views that are allowed to be shared. That doesn't mean that it's something I agree with all the time. We have an opportunity in America. I don't agree with everyone, what they have done with that opportunity. But I have my own opportunity to help make things better.
Right.
And everybody sort of has that opportunity as well. And I don't think it makes you a bad American to look at the negative things that have happened so as to not allow them to happen again. So as to learn from them in a way that we learn our lesson about it and improve it and make it a country that's acceptable to everybody. We interned Japanese people in World War II, the Nikkei, right? Then we said we were sorry. Now we are interning brown and black Americans because they somehow look foreign, or they're not even foreign, or they're born in America and they're being put in concentration camps right now. And 30, 40 to a cell, they're sharing recycled water out of a toilet. Those are all things that have been seen by Congress people that have gone to visit those places. What was the point of apologizing for anything like that if they're just going to go ahead and do it again? So, I think that we're a country of contradictions. But again, I think every country is to some extent, and the American ideology is different no matter where you go, and there's no one American ideology. There's no one American point of view.
So they're diverse opinions.
Completely diverse, and that's one town in Washington State.
So I brought this up because the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons are so much illustrated in pop culture. And I read a book by Miyamoto Yuki-san. You met her, right?
Yeah, she's really wonderful.
So she's a professor in Chicago, and she teaches ethics and the history of atomic bomb. And so she's making a good point that the narratives are taught in America are so different from the narratives of Japan. So this is the tensions come.
Right.
And so for Americans, the mushroom cloud is, forget me if I'm wrong, but it is like a pop icon. And it's a symbol of scientific accomplishment or something that ended the war, or
it has been used in the past as such. Yes,
but it's changing.
I think it's changing.
So can you explain how it's changing?
One example of how it's changing is that I was taught that my grandfather was in the mission that ended World War II, right? That's something I was taught, and they still teach that it ended the war. But they also, for example, I was a Fulbright National Geographic Fellow in 2015. And in that fellowship, of course, I was documenting atomic bomb survivor testimonies. And even beforehand, I was a member of a small group led by Sadako Sasaki's family, Sadako Legacy, Masahiro Sasaki and his son Yuji, and Sadako's eventual nephew. And they brought me and President Truman's grandson to Japan in 2012 to meet atomic bomb survivors, to hear firsthand their testimonies and share those testimonies with the world. So what did I do? Well, in National Geographic, they have National Geographic Learning. They have textbooks, U.S. history textbooks. So I was connected to their U.S. history textbook division, and we got them to update the textbook where they teach now not just that it ended the war, but the human suffering that happened underneath the mushroom clouds. So I think that there is a changing perspective in the sense that we are able now to acknowledge the different people that were affected by it, the innocent people that were affected in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But that's not so that we apologize for what happened in World War II. And that's not so that we discount what Japan was doing in World War II that led to the massive fire raids and the air bombings and the fire bombings and the atomic bombs. It's that we have to understand that nuclear weapons are a different type of bomb. Nuclear weapons have very strange, very horrible humanitarian impacts that if today were used would end the world as we know it. So it's not to say like, oh, well, we're here to talk about atomic bombs as a negative to absolve Japan of what they did during the war. It's that we understand them as a very unique thing that's a very terrifying thing for the rest of the world that shouldn't be spread and proliferated. And in fact, we need to learn how to get along so that we don't need to use those or never have to worry about using them. That we're working towards having better relationships, not better weapons. And I think that that is the thing, and that's the work, and that's the action that me and Kosuzu and me and the survivors that have gotten to know each other, that's what our hope is.
So you live in America and you talk with the survivors, so you know both narratives.
Yeah.
And in her book, Miyamoto-san is raising an interesting point that whenever the survivor comes to the United States and talks about his or her experience for American students or citizens, they are shocked, but the main reaction they get is that, thank you for being brave to share that story. Sure. But in Japan, it's quite different. It leads to, let's end the nuclear war. So this is the different type of narratives are perceived. And I'm not saying which is good or bad, but the difference is making difficulties to make a conversation.
Let's not also forget that the atomic bomb survivors in Japan were discriminated against for decades as well, and that they were silenced within Japan. Which, to be fair, I think there is this survivor's guilt when it comes to anything. So, and also, even within Jewish culture, Holocaust survivors didn't really speak out until like the 60s. And there was this prevailing theory within Israel and the Israeli state that like they should have been stronger and fought back more, and so therefore they didn't talk about what they went through because they were ashamed. And there is a deep shame of being an atomic bomb survivor within Japanese culture as well that has led to some silence and many people not really feeling like they could speak out until it was too late. Now, in terms of the bravery thing, I think that generally anyone that listens to what happens when an atomic bomb is dropped on people has a human response.
Right.
And that human response, well, again, this is the world we live in. Anyone that's listening is thinking about themselves, right? So like what they're thinking is, gosh, I really don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to my kids, and I don't want that to happen to my grandchildren. And how terrible it is that happened to this person. If you sit there and you listen to it, it's really easy to get online, type your feelings, press send, and then go about your day. That's too easy. And I think you get a lot of those comments from people that are just venting something and going about their day. But if you actually sit and listen to somebody and meet that person and stare them in the eye, you have a human moment where you can connect with the fact that this person experienced something. I was with Shigeko Sasamori, who unfortunately we've lost in January, but we went to Singapore together with Peace Boat. And she gave her testimony in an audience of people who were not so friendly to feeling like they wanted to hear about Japanese suffering. And so what happened was that she was called out on that. And she said, no, this is terrible. There were mothers that had to run away from their children being burned alive in their homes to save themselves, and not anyone should have to go through that. Nobody. And so I think we all could understand in that moment that that was terrible, and no one should have to go through that. With a nuclear bomb, you can't go in and save people, because you will be exposed to the radiation from that bomb, and then you will yourself die. So you have to let people sit there, fester, and die, and not help them. And that's just if it's even in a limited use. And we're talking about using nuclear weapons, again, in like, what's the term? The tactile nukes.
Yeah.
And those are like the size of Hiroshima. So that's what they're talking about, as a small nuke. And that's unimaginable, even within itself, to be used again. And no one can save those people without themselves being exposed. So this is a different kind of weapon. This is something that, look, my grandfather died of bone cancer, which was likely from exposure to radiation. So this isn't just a weapon that killed the people that it was dropped on, but it also affected the people that dropped it.
Do you think your grandfather also, I don't know, I know you don't like this term, but hibakusha, your grandfather was a hibakusha?
Well, I don't like the term because I don't like labels.
Okay.
And I think that it's been, since it was used to discriminate against people in the past. So I just want to be clear about that. But I do think that he was a person exposed to the atomic bombs. And I think when you translate person exposed to atomic bomb and also person exposed to radiation, it translates to hibakusha. So I understand the translation. But I think that if he was exposed twice in the back of the planes, he wasn't wearing his goggles in one mission because it got in the way, I think that that's how he was exposed, and he probably got bone cancer as a result. And I guess by definition that makes us third generation exposed people. And so, but I don't wear that on my sleeve. I don't say that first because I believe that as somebody that comes from the family that dropped the bombs, I want to give voice and I want to make sure that I'm sharing with responsibility the stories of the people that actually were there that day and survived it. And it's not about me at all, really. It's really about giving them a platform and helping share their testimonies and their experiences with Americans and also global folks. I spent 3 years in Rwanda in a documentary training program where I was helping other people tell their story and using industry standard format where we brought people that had been formerly connected with National Geographic and other really wonderful media companies, and we were all telling a story together to that way when I left, they would all be working on their own and having their own companies and the experience of having done a feature-length documentary. And, you know, so there's somebody on my team, my associate producer, Cedric Ashimwe, who came with me to Japan in March of 2023. And I'm always filming, but I've never been filmed. And so Cedric filmed me. And his mom survived the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And so when you're sitting here listening to all these people talk about nuclear weapons, and you know that, well, 1 million people were killed in 100 days with machete and guns and rocks and rape and terrible human weapons. I don't know if I can say that R word on your network, but you know that there's something deeper that needs to be addressed.
Right.
And it's not just the nuclear weapons, it's the problem, it's the human behavior.
Right.
Any technology, like nuclear technology, has been used for medicine. It's been used for power. Power has failed, as we've learned, but it's not necessarily the technology that's the problem, it's that people are irresponsible with it and people are weaponizing it, and we weaponize technology. It's like guns are for safety in a sense that we have other people that are bad with guns. And so that's the problem. It's not the guns, it's the people. And so obviously we shouldn't have readily available use for guns, but that's an American problem, not a Japanese one. But by no means do I think we're a perfect country, and by no means do I think we all agree on anything. That's what we're seeing famously, is that we don't agree on anything. And so I think that my responsibility isn't necessarily to be a politician. There are smarter people than me. It's not about standing on ground and justifying the past. It's about documenting it and forwarding it and remembering it with reason and respect to what was experienced by the people above and below both of those mushroom clouds. And
because James Cameron is shooting a movie about the nuclear.
About Kosuzu's grandfather.
Yes, and you were beyond the movie, right?
I don't know. I literally don't know a single. I don't know anything about that movie.
So I talked about Ghibli and the movie James Cameron because how can we pass on this story? Because you're a filmmaker.
Well, I'm encouraged by someone like James Cameron. We need movies like that because our generation is a visual generation. We need to watch what happens, and we need to do it safely, so it's not actually watching it happen. But like in 1980s, there was a movie called The Day After, and I think the UK had something called Threads. And those movies shocked the world. Everybody watched The Day After, and at the height of the nuclear arms race. And I think that was a big wake-up call for a lot of people. We need to see it.
Right.
We need to see what happens. We need to see how terrible it was, not as a political tool against who deserved what or why it happened or who should apologize for it or anything, but as a way of saying, no, this is what we need to avoid.
So this leads to my final question. So could you share your experience you actually came to Japan and you met the survivors, and you briefly mentioned about the social media, and it's an age when people leave comments online, but you came actually, and this is why I invited you to the show, because you personally had connections with the survivors. Could you talk about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people are surprised at the fact that I went to meet survivors of the bomb, knowing that my grandfather did what he did. But my experience is that when I asked to meet people, they said yes. And I was surprised. Even me, I was surprised. And not just that they said yes, and not just that they told me what they went through, but then they could, over the years, we grew to become friends. And even some as close as family. Literally, Jong-kun Lee, a survivor who was from Korea, he's passed away, unfortunately. He's someone I was so close with. And he, to the point where he listed me one day as a family member on Facebook, and I had to pick which member, and I was like, whoa, pressure. I didn't write grandfather.
Brother.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I don't want to write grandfather, because Lee-san always felt very young, and he always wore a pop of color. So that he wore tennis shoes on stage and with his suit, and one time he did push-ups on stage.
Wow, cool.
So he never aged in my mind. So I was like, uncle, so quickly. He was my uncle. I have a Keiko Okura, who was one of the first survivors that I met, and she was an English-speaking survivor, and she and I work together to this day. And I was like, Okura-san, you're like my grandma, and she goes, I'm not like your grandma. I'm like your peace coworker. I'm like your coworker, and because she's young at heart too. They're all so young at heart, and at the same time, it's not always been fun. It's never. But when we're actually having those moments together at the nomikai, when we're laughing and we're enjoying each other's time and we're sharing nihonshu and doing karaoke together, even that's to me the most miraculous thing. That's to me what peace is. That they could literally experience an atomic bomb when they were children and then befriend the person that dropped it on them and sing together. That is literally the definition of peace in my mind. And of course, it's getting on stage and hearing the testimonies. Those testimonies are not easy. They're really hard to share. And it is brave to tell that to people on stage, because it's a horrible thing that happened to them. And it's a trauma they relive every day whenever they tell it. And I don't take that lightly, but it's the fact that we can party together and enjoy each other as people. Because at the end of the day, they're not just hibakusha, but they were people who were all individually affected. I am sure there are people who are angry with me that are coming, that they do not want to meet me, they do not want to tell me their story. They can't find the words for it. And I understand that.
It must have been very difficult for maybe some of the survivors to just meet you.
I think that they're the heroes of the story. They're the ones that said, let me be his friend. Let me tell him what I went through, and let me work on a book with him. And Ko Suzu-san, first of all, she's such a poetic writer, and she explains her whole evolution in thinking towards me and how she could be my friend. And I think we have so much responsibility to learn from people like her, and people like all of the hibakusha who explain why and how they could overcome these feelings and get over them, to the sense that they're not finished, but they were able to befriend someone like me. And I don't think I'm unique. I know my grandfather had a unique role in history, but I don't think it's unique to go somewhere that suffered because of your ancestors and your grandparents, and face what they went through, to bring that story back to where you came from. I think people would be surprised at who would welcome them, even from Japan, even from America, if they faced this moment and said, I want to acknowledge what happened. Please tell me what happened so that I can tell people what happened. I don't know who would be turned away for that. And I think that's why I wasn't turned away.
Why did you decide to meet people? Because of course, it was the person who took part in the atomic bomb mission was your grandfather, which he passed away when you were 4 years old.
Yes, that's right.
But you decided to face the survivors.
Well, I guess I left out that there's a coincidence that in my family, my mom and her dad, before my parents met, were friends with someone who survived Hiroshima. So I met this person when I was a young child.
Okay.
And so that meeting left a lasting impact on my life. So many people tell our stories, that our grandfather's stories, but we needed to be the ones that were in charge of that. And we needed to be the ones that express that. And maybe we're not as good of a writer as the guy who got his book adapted by James Cameron to be in a movie, but we also are our grandfather's grandchildren. And we also have our family stories and our personal accounts. And I didn't do this because I'm a writer. I became a writer. I'm a filmmaker, and yet I've published more books than my films because I've gotten tied up with this story because I feel dedicated to telling it, but I'm learning as I go. I'm growing up. And this has been something you've seen me go through for the last 9 years, 10 years. And even before then, it was 5 years before that. And so I've really grown up in this movement the way that the survivors themselves were exposed to a bomb and grew up to become the messengers that they are. And I'm growing up to become the messenger that I am because I'm not naive. When it's the 100th anniversary, we're going to be the ones talking about it.
Right.
And they're not going to be here anymore. So I have a long life ahead of me to make sure I get this right and then leave it behind for the next generation. I mean, I know that Kosuzu's son Shinosuke is quietly getting interested in this topic. And I have a nephew who's also, he's 8, so he's not getting, I mean, he's getting interested in the whole everything. He's brilliant.
Oh, it's because of you, because you...
Well, no. Maybe my sister raises him right. He's just getting interested in like he's now figuring out, I mean, him and his sister are looking at like, who is Pop and that kind of thing, but they're brilliant. And if and when they choose to do anything with this, it's up to them. It's their life. It's their destiny. Their lives are theirs to live, and I don't tell them to do anything. But you know, these people exist, and everybody is willing to work together in this movement to make sure nuclear weapons are not ever used and that they are in fact abolished. And I think that we show that it's possible to be friends from above and below the mushroom clouds.
Right.
And I think what a lovely way to end the conversation on, but not that I'm in charge of that.
So we need to wrap up. So we have tons of topics we could not cover.
Sure.
Maybe we had some discussions that we don't disagree actually.
Yeah.
And you know, we live in a world with complicated international relations. You know, there's things as nuclear deterrent theory that you know, actually having an atomic bomb will like prevent war, but we don't have time to discuss that. So
there's still wars going on, and we still have nuclear weapons.
In Ukraine and everything. So you're not a politician, so I won't challenge you on that. But
thank you.
As a filmmaker, so for the final comment, what can you do? Because personally, I would like to stop this. I don't want any nuclear war in the future.
Totally same.
Yeah, so
I actually am starting the fundraising for a documentary right now. And me and Kosuzu have a hope. I've gone to where her grandfather survived, both bombs. I've gone to many places, many people have survived in both cities. But I want to bring Kosuzu to America with me. We need support for that. I want to go to my grandfather's childhood home. I've never been there. I want to go to Wendover. I've never been there. I went to the place the bombs were invented and announced and created and used and detonated for the first time in New Mexico. I have never been to those places. And so I'm going to go to those places for the first time so that Kosuzu-san and I can face this together. And I think through so much of this journey, we've done it together. And separate and together, because obviously we're not together right now, but we have spoken separately together over the years, and that kind of walked us closer and closer together, and we decided to keep walking closer and closer together, and now we're able to face these things ourselves. And I think that what we do is not just tell a story of the bombs, but we also tell the story of our friendship and go on this journey, and we take a journey together. And I think like every great story is a journey, and I think that we have a chance and an opportunity to build that group and build that investment to make it right and tell it right. We have time. And I know Cameron's movie is coming. I'm very much anticipating that happening. I mean, he's the greatest filmmaker of all time, in my opinion. So to be able to see his take on what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I hope the world wakes up. I hope we keep talking about it. It can't be forgotten. We can't let it happen again. I mean, I'm encouraged by these great filmmakers that are going to tackle the story. And I mean, I hope other ones. I hope there's an anime. I hope there's a mainstream movie. I think with this certain level
or even from Japan, there should be a movie.
There should be, there's a great book someone can adapt into a movie if they're so curious and want to. Yeah, or any of them all together now. I mean, I love Yuki-san, so she's a sensei. I mean, she's a really wonderful person. I mean, these are all people at the end of the day. And as Setsuko Thurlow said, she's a survivor from Hiroshima. She was very influential in the nuclear ban treaty with the ICAN. And the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons.
She took Nobel Peace Prize.
That's right. And I was there to witness all of those things happen. And from steps in front of her, while she gave her speech at the United Nations, where I was filming her that day for another documentary about her, she said that every single person killed by the atomic bomb had a name. And everybody was loved by someone.
Right.
And that is at the end of the day, everybody on this planet has a name. Right. And everybody is loved by somebody. And we have an opportunity and a duty to protect those lives. And it's not, when you have people in power, you have politicians that are trying to make somebody the enemy, when really the problem is rice prices, for example, there's something else, and they don't have a solution for the rice prices, so they have to make a scapegoat. And you have to be very careful when someone is making someone the enemy, when the problem is the economy. And the problem is how much money we're spending on things, and not making much more money in our income. So be very wary, and I'm very wary when people try to make anyone the enemy. Even within, I know we don't have the time, but like even within Israel and Gaza, I can't listen to anybody that's taking one side or the other side. And there is, in fact, a movement growing in the middle that's trying to have a coexistence movement, a stand together movement. And they're the people I can listen to and support, because we need to do this together. You can't do it on one side and blame the other, and that goes on forever and ever and ever, and everybody loses. It is the difference between losing, I mean, it's the difference between winning and being right. And everybody wants to be right, but we have to win. And that means sometimes accepting that you're not going to get to be right, but that we all get to live on at the end of the day. And if there's a nuclear war, that's not an option anymore. So that's the thing that has to be taken out of the equation. The rest can continue as it is, but we can't have nuclear weapons risking everything.
Okay, thank you, Ari. And I highly recommend this book to our audience. And thank you for sharing your story, your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
And let's continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.